Things like welding, grinding, cutting, they're pretty much the backbone of industry, right? But they all share this one hidden danger. A single spark can turn into a total catastrophe. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the safety blueprint for what's called hot work, and you'll see that the most important steps happen long before a torch is ever even lit. All right, to get us started, let me ask you a question. What do you think is a leading cause of major, and I mean preventable, industrial fires? The answer might not be what you think, and it's a risk that is very often hiding in plain sight. And there it is. According to data from FM Global, who are a major commercial property insurer, hot work is the #2 cause of fires for their clients, right behind electrical issues. So we're not just talking about ticking a box on a form here. This is about preventing an absolute disaster. So what exactly is hot work? Well, it's this catch-all term for any temporary job that's going to create open flames or just a lot of heat and sparks. Yeah, the obvious stuff like welding comes to mind, but it also includes things like grinding, soldering, and even some roofing work. Basically, if an activity is introducing a potential ignition source into an environment, that's hot work. So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll talk about why this is a preventable catastrophe. Then we'll look at the actual blueprint for safety. Third, we'll cover how to prepare a safe zone. And finally, we'll get into the crucial watch that has to happen long after the work is actually finished. Okay, first up, let's get into those hidden dangers. And here's the #1 thing you gotta remember. Hot work fires, they aren't really accidents. They're failures in procedure. And that means prevention starts way, way before a single spark is ever created. And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote, it comes right from the top of the official FM Global Hot Work Permit. I mean, think about that. Before you even get to the safety precautions, the very first thing it tells you to do is stop. The most important rule is to ask if you even need to do the job this way. Because, the safest hot work is the hot work you never have to do. So what does avoiding hot work actually look like? Well, instead of welding, could you use mechanical bolts? Instead of using a torch to cut, could you use hydraulic shears? These cold methods take the source of ignition completely out of the equation. The big takeaway here is pretty simple. Hot work should always be your last resort, not your go-to move. Okay, so let's say you've looked at all the options, and hot work is truly unavoidable. What now? Well, the entire process from here on out revolves around one critical piece of paper, the hot work permit. And listen, this is not just some form you file away. It's your actual operational blueprint for safety. What this permit really does is force a systematic review of all the risks. It's a checklist that makes sure everyone involved, from management to the operator to the fire watch, has thought through all the hazards and put precautions in place for every single phase, before, during, and after the work is done. And this whole permit system isn't just some internal best practice a company made up. It's all based on a huge industry-wide standard, NFPA 51B. And this is the same standard that major players like OSHA, the Department of Energy, and the American Petroleum Institute all point to. So yeah, it's pretty much the official playbook for hot work safety. All right, now let's see how this permit translates into action on the ground. The very first step is preparing the safe zone, and that whole process revolves around one really critical number. 35 feet, or about 11 meters. Remember this number. This is the critical distance in hot work safety. But why? Well, it's because sparks and that molten slag, that super hot liquid stuff from welding, can fly a whole lot farther than you'd think. So this 35-foot radius becomes the designated hazard zone, and it needs a complete and total safety lockdown. And inside that zone, these things are absolutely non-negotiable. First, move everything combustible out of there. If you literally can't move something, then you have to protect it with the right kind of shielding. Floors have to be swept totally clean. I'm talking even fine dust or a little oily residue can ignite. Every single opening in the walls or the floors has to be covered. And you gotta think about the airflow too. A ventilation duct can act like a highway for a stray spark, carrying it to a completely different part of the building. When it comes to protecting those things you can't move, using the right gear is absolutely crucial. A welding curtain, that's for standing up vertically, like against a wall, to catch light sparks from grinding. A blanket is what you lay down horizontally over equipment for more moderate sparks and slag. But a welding pad, that's a whole different beast. It's heavy duty, designed to go right under the work and handle the really nasty stuff like molten slag. Grabbing the wrong one is just asking for trouble. All right, so the area's prepped, permits signed, the job's done. But this, right here, is one of the most dangerous moments.
It's so easy for a false sense of security to creep in, and that's exactly why this final phase, the watch after work, is so incredibly important.
For this to work, you need a coordinated team where everyone knows their job. Management? They have the ultimate responsibility for the whole safety program. The hot work operator? Their job is to do the work safely, following that permit to a T. And the fire watch? They have one and only one dedicated job. Watch for fire and be ready to sound the alarm and jump into action immediately. Which brings us to a really important question. The tools are packed up, the job is done, so why are we saying the danger is far from over? It's because a single stray spark can get into some sawdust or insulation or just a greasy spot, and it can sit there and smolder, sometimes for hours, before it finally erupts into a massive fire. This delayed ignition is what makes hot work so sneaky and so dangerous. The area might look perfectly safe, but a fire could be silently brewing just out of sight. And that is why the watch is so critical. The dedicated fire watch has to be there during the entire job and for a full 60 minutes after it stops. But that's not all. The permit actually requires that the area continues to be checked on periodically for another 3 hours. Why? To catch those sneaky, smoldering fires. This whole 4-hour cool-down period is absolutely vital. And to bring it all home, let's look at this quote right from the NFPA standard. It puts the final accountability right where it belongs, on management. It's their job to make sure this whole system, from asking, do we even need to do this, all the way to that final 3-hour check, is followed every single time, no exceptions. It's about creating a true culture of safety, not just mindlessly checking off boxes on a form. So let's leave it with this thought. The next time you see hot work happening, remember that the real question isn't just, is the work done? The question that actually prevents fires is the site truly safe? And the answer to that? Well, it's found in the vigilance, that watchfulness, that has to continue long after the last spark has faded away.